At 63, Dan Marino reveals the toughest players he has faced. At 63, Dan Marino looks back on a long football life with calm and clear eyes. He won awards and set records, but when he talks about his career, he focuses on the people who made his days on the field the hardest. Marino thinks less about stat lines and more about opponents who forced him to change, to learn, and to grow. This script follows his memories. It explores the kinds of players who troubled him, the games that did not go according to plan, and the lessons he took away from each hard-fought moment. The nature of toughness. Marino uses the word tough in many ways. For some players, toughness meant raw strength that could push an offensive line back and collapse the pocket. For others, it was speed that got a rusher into the backfield in a single step. For some defenders, it was technique, hands, and timing that broke up plays with surgical precision. Marino respected players who combined physical tools with a sharp mind. When a defender showed both power and intelligence, he became the kind of opponent who forced Marino to dig deeper. Those players changed the way games were played and forced adjustments that lasted long after a single season ended. The men who made life difficult were not always the most famous names. Often, they were technicians who did a simple job perfectly. They shot gaps at the right moment, matched angles on blocks, and used leverage to win small battles. Marino learned to spot that kind of craft on film, and he learned to respect it on the field. The most dangerous opponents were the ones who made routine plays fail and made Marino earn every yard he gained. The pass rushers. Marino's career overlapped with a generation of excellent pass rushers. These players rewrote what it meant to pressure a quarterback. Their presence shaped game plans, altered protections, and sometimes decided the outcome of a season. Marino remembers facing some of the most feared rushers of his time. Men who used length, speed, and relentless effort could make even a veteran quarterback feel hurried. When those rushers were near the line, there was less time for timing routes and fewer chances to let plays develop. Some rushers were masters of technique. They used hand placement and footwork to create separation. Others relied on strength and relentless pursuit. When a rusher could do both, the task of blocking him became a chess match. Marino learned to adjust by getting the ball out faster, by using quick hitters, and by trusting his receivers to win small battles. When a safety read his eyes and jumped a throw, the result could be a turnover or a breakup that halted a scoring drive. Marino also faced safeties who could patrol the middle and take away post routes. That made it hard for him to target tight ends or to hit seam routes. He learned to use speed outs, wheel routes, and designed rollouts to avoid a safety who could take away the deep middle. Those safeties were often unsung, but their influence on the scoreboard and on game planning was profound. Memorable games. Certain games stuck with Marino because of how intense they were. Playing certain teams often meant facing a fierce front and a coordinated pass rush. Marino remembers nights where the pocket looked like it was collapsing on every play. In those games, he had to throw on the run and trust his arm because the pocket never formed cleanly. Those nights tested his mobility, his vision, and his ability to complete throws under pressure. Games against teams with dominant defensive leaders felt different because a single player could change the entire tone of the match. When a defender dominated an edge or controlled the middle, Marino had to find ways to compensate. Those matchups taught him the value of improvisation and the need to trust his body and training, even when the plan broke down. The most difficult games demanded consistent focus and forced Marino to be at his best on every snap. Preparation and adaptation. Marino believed that preparation mattered. He watched film, went through reps, and worked on protections with his coaches. Pre-game plans tried to limit dangerous players. Yet in football, the best plan sometimes fails on the first play. When a pass rusher performed better than film suggested, Marino had to adapt quickly. Adapting meant faster reads, earlier releases, or leaving the pocket to find space. Marino's quick release and sharp decision-making helped him in those moments. He had to trust the drills he practiced. He also learned that protection is a team effort. Offensive linemen who could adjust and find ways to buy even a second more made a big difference. Marino saw games won when linemen rose to the moment and kept the pocket clean, long enough for timing routes to develop. Personal cost. Playing against elite defenders came with a toll. Marino took hits and had nights where pain lingered long after the whistle. He seldom complained publicly, but he admitted that the punishment added up. The physical cost was part of the job. Yet he also felt pride in enduring those tests. Completing drives or throwing a touchdown after facing intense pressure felt earned. Those moments were proof that preparation and courage could overcome force. He also carried memories of teammates who sacrificed for the team, linemen who took on double teams, receivers who fought for extra yards, and running backs who absorbed hits to keep plays alive were part of those hard-fought battles. The shared struggle bound players together and created deep team bonds that lasted long after careers ended. Respect for opponents. Respect runs through Marino's memories. He rarely used trash talk to describe the players who troubled him. Instead, he spoke with admiration for their craft. Great defenders worked hard to perfect their skills. They studied playbooks, watched film, and honed techniques. Marino respected that dedication. He saw opponents as craftsmen who deserved praise for the way they changed the game. That respect extended to how a dominant defender altered offensive strategy. A disruptive player forced teams to scheme differently and to find new ways to win. Marino recognized the lasting effect of those players. He honored them by acknowledging how they impacted his decisions and his team's approach to games. Lessons learned. The toughest opponents taught Marino lessons that shaped his career. He learned to release the ball quicker and to trust his reads. He learned to move when the pocket collapsed and to use his feet to extend plays without losing fundamentals. He learned to value teammates and the small things that protect a quarterback. He also learned mental lessons. Tough opponents forced him to remain calm under intense pressure. He learned that confidence could be fragile and that the best way to protect it was through work and repetition. These lessons made him a leader. He passed on advice to younger players, teaching them to study opponents and to respect the work required to reach a high level. Practice and film study. Marino credited a large part of his durability and success to how much he prepared away from the stadium. His approach to film study was methodical. He looked for patterns and tendencies in opponents. He watched not only the best players on the other side, but also the role players who quietly influenced a game. Knowing which defensive tackle liked to shoot a specific gap or which linebacker favored a particular blitz angle gave Marino small edges on game day. Study also meant learning how opponents disguised their looks and how they adjusted in the second half. On the practice field, Marino worked on rhythm and timing. Repetition created trust between him and his receivers. Practice reps were not glamorous, but they were essential. Marino used the hours in practice to build muscle memory so that when a pass rusher arrived unexpectedly, he could still execute. Reps also helped the offensive line build communication so they could react to stunts and twists without losing their shape. Those practices turned into instincts when a game sped up and the decision window narrowed. How teammates made a difference. Marino frequently spoke of the unsung work of his teammates. Quarterbacks often take credit for big throws, but those passes rely on a team of men who share the risk. Marino respected linemen who gave their lives to hold a pocket open. He praised receivers who fought for every inch and running backs who offered reliable outlets. The bond between Marino and his teammates was forged in shared hardship. When the team faced a defense loaded with top-tier defenders, it was those small acts of sacrifice that kept drives alive. Protecting the quarterback is also a mental task. Linemen who were calm and decisive made Marino calmer. A center who could call protections and make adjustments at the line brought clarity and reduced chaos. Marino appreciated quiet leaders who made fast choices that mattered in the heat of battle. He credited many wins to those unsung adjustments and to teammates who accepted the dirty work. Small adjustments that mattered. Across a long career, Marino found that small adjustments often mattered more than grand gestures. He changed footwork to get rid of the ball quicker and practiced throws on the move, so pressure did not always stop a play. He worked with coaches to design hot routes and quick passes that provided safe options against blitzes. Marino also learned to trust his instincts. When a defense showed a look he recognized from film study, he could alter the play in a split second. Those tiny choices often saved drives and turned difficult moments into scoring opportunities. Public perception and private truths. To the public, Marino was often seen through stat lines and highlight reels. In private, he carried memories of the tough nights. He remembered drives that failed despite perfect execution and plays that were ruined by one excellent defensive action. Those moments taught humility. Marino learned that even great players could be humbled by a single opponent on a given day. He believed the public often misunderstood the subtleties of the game. Fans may applaud a touchdown, but they rarely see the fight that led to it or the adjustments made on the sideline to make that play possible. Teaching and mentorship. After his playing days, Marino turned to teaching and mentorship. He shared the lessons he learned facing the toughest opponents with younger players. He taught them film habits, footwork drills, and how to read coverages. Marino emphasized the importance of character. He told young quarterbacks that how they handle adversity defines their careers as much as their physical skills. He used stories about difficult opponents to illustrate big lessons in preparation, patience, and humility. He pushed young players to develop habits that would sustain them through seasons of pain and moments of doubt. Impact on the game. Marino's reflections on tough opponents also spoke to the larger history of football. Great defenders did more than stop plays. They forced changes in how offenses thought and operated. Marino saw the game evolve because defenders kept pushing the limits. He took pride in having to adapt. Offenses became faster and more precise because defenses forced them to be. Marino believed the sport's best moments came from this continuous push and pull, and that adaptation was the engine of progress. Personal moments and anecdotes beyond general lessons. Marino had personal memories that stood out. He remembered games where a single play felt like a turning point. He remembered the sting of a sack on a crucial third down and the relief of bouncing back on the next drive. He kept a mental catalog of plays that taught him something new. A relentless rusher might have changed how he read a snap, and that small change sometimes led to a better throw on the next play. Those tiny epiphanies accumulated into a deeper sense of craft and a better feel for the rhythm of a game. A life in football. For Marino, the sport was a calling. Facing tough opponents was central to that calling. He did not resent the pain or the defeats. He used them as fuel to get better. Marino looked back and saw a life shaped by challenge and by the people who offered it. The opponents who made him grind and learn were as important as the games he won. He recognized that every great career is a story of adapting, of learning, and of answering the test posed by another great athlete. Marino often returns to one idea: respect matters. He learned early that tough opponents demand as much character as skill. Facing fierce defenders taught him to stay humble and to study every detail. He credits those moments with shaping the man he is today. He also credits the coaches and teammates who helped him prepare and recover. Their work made the hard nights survivable and the wins meaningful. He thinks about legacy in a quiet way. Records fade, but lessons last. Marino hopes young players remember that facing the best is the fastest route to growth. He urges them to welcome hard matchups, to keep learning, and to treat opponents with dignity. The stories of pressure, pain, and comeback form the core of his memory. They are not tales of glory alone, but of steady work and shared sacrifice. At 63, he sees football as a teacher. The opponents who tested him remain part of his life. He still watches film, still talks strategy, and still values the lessons that come from being challenged. In the end, he believes the sport is richer when players meet tough competition with effort and respect. That belief closes his reflections and gives a simple guide to anyone who wants to play at a high level. Conclusion: Dan Marino's memories of the toughest players he faced are a study in respect and growth. He sees a career defined by encounters that demanded his best. Those opponents taught him to prepare harder, to play smarter, and to value teamwork. At 63, he no longer measures his life only in records, but in the lessons that came from adversity. He hopes that young players will learn the same lesson. The best way to become great is to face the great. Accept the struggle and let it make you better. Marino's life in football shows that true greatness is forged by challenge and by the respect shared between opponents. Players who pushed him hardest also helped define his career. Those memories remain a source of gratitude and a guide for anyone who wants to play at the highest level.